I am excited to go to Korea. For those who don't already know, I've been dating my girlfriend Minji for about a year, and Minji is actually Korean. And for the first time ever, I have a chance to go to Korea with her and visit her home country. Before coming to East Asia, I was certainly more familiar with China and Japan and Taiwan, but I was still interested in Korea. I think human rights issues around the world are really interesting to me. So countries with limited free speech like China and North Korea have been especially interesting. So because of this, I've already learned a little bit about Korean culture before meeting Minji. Of course, over the past last year, I've been able to get to know her more and learn more about her culture, and I've been trying to learn the Korean language. We've been doing some language exchange together, but because I focused so much on graduation and work and school, I haven't actually progressed that much. I'm hoping in the coming years I can progress much faster, and hopefully next time when we go to Korea, I won't have to rely on her so much. In this video, I'm going to talk about my trip and my experiences in Korea, and hopefully you guys will enjoy.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm in Korea now. Yeah, it's been nice so far. I mean, it's been less than a day, but things are going pretty well. I have this backpack over here, and I have had flags of all the countries that I've been to before. So we've got US, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Canada, and Japan. And I've been saving this. I've been saving this for a while now. I got the Korea pin early, so once I got here I could throw it on. And I'm gonna put it on right now. Boom, there we go, it's on. Now that's a little bit close, so I probably will have to move these around a little bit. Yeah, I haven't been to a ton of countries, especially for someone who lives in Taiwan, which is like a great location to travel, but because of COVID-19, I haven't really been able to travel around much since I've been here. So hopefully I'll be able to go to some more countries. I really want to go to some countries in Southeast Asia eventually. But yeah, we're kind of just chilling over here in East Asia right now.
Okay, so honestly, I've actually already gone on my trip. I'm filming this after the trip. So I'm really just sharing about the experience. When I was on the trip, I didn't really have time to record my voice or talk that much. I was just kind of enjoying everything. I wanted to take it all in as it was my first time actually going there. Although I didn't do a lot of talking, I did do a lot of filming and I took a lot of pictures. So if you want to see more pictures like the ones that I've shown in this video or will show in this video, feel free to follow me on Instagram here or in the description below. So during our trip, we went to 3 different cities. We went to Seoul, we went to Busan, and then we went to Gyeongju in that order. And when I first got there, I had to actually take the train by myself. Most of the time throughout the trip, I will be relying on Minji to translate for me, recommend places to go, and things like that. But when I first got there, I had to take the train by myself, so I was already relying on my English a little bit. Luckily, if you are going to Korea or if you're traveling in East Asia, you know, most places like the airports, the MRT, places with a lot of tourists will have somebody who speaks English. So it wasn't that big of a deal. The reason I had to go by myself is because Minji had actually already gone to Korea a couple weeks before me. Let's just say I'm really lucky my native language is English. The first day we didn't do too much, especially right when we got there. We just got some Korean fried chicken and then we went to our Airbnb. I love Korean fried chicken in Taipei, so I'm glad I got to try some authentic Korean fried chicken. The first Airbnb we stayed in was pretty nice, but we did have to hike up some stairs to get there. Seoul is kind of mountainous and there's a lot of hills even throughout the parts that are more urbanized. I did like the Airbnb, but the hiking was a bit much. Later that night, we went to an island that's kind of in the river in the middle of Seoul. And at the island, you can see the skyline of Seoul. There's some other shops and bookstores and things like that there. We did go to the bookstore, but I think they closed shortly after we got there. And I didn't really do much. I tried to find some easy books for me, tried to find some maybe children's books that I could try to read in Korean, but that was mostly for Minji. It was nice to see the park and kind of get to see what the other Korean people like to do that are actually from the area. And after that, we went back to our Airbnb and got settled in. Speaking of settling in, if you're going to Korea for the first time, here are some things that I think you should prepare before you go. So number one is a SIM card or an eSIM. This is the website that I used. The link will be in the description below if you want to check that out if you're actually going to Korea. It was really easy to get set up. They have some instructions. They'll email you instructions too on how to get it set up if you're on iPhone or an Android. It was pretty straightforward. I didn't have to actually exchange a SIM card, so that was really nice because I went with the eSIM option. Now, another thing you're gonna need your phone for is getting some apps to use in Korea. The two that I downloaded that I thought were useful while I was there was the Naver Maps app and the T-Locker app. I'll try to put those in the description below if I can find the app links for them. The Naver Maps app I would recommend because the Google Maps is like functional for buses, and I would recommend that you still use those for finding bus times and things like that. But Naver Maps was the only app that I could use to figure out how to walk to different places. Of course, like if you just look at the map, you can navigate by yourself. So Google Maps still functions. But another nice thing about Naver Maps is that a lot of the places that are missing from Google Maps are still already on Naver Maps. Overall, it's just a nice option to have, especially if you're driving. I don't think Google Maps can do navigation for driving, but Naver Maps doesn't have a problem with that. The other app that I mentioned is the T-Locker app. The only reason I would recommend this is that if you get in early and you can't check into your Airbnb or your hotel or wherever you're staying, the lockers that are in the subway system in Seoul can be opened with this app. If you have everything set up prior to arriving, it might just make things a little bit easier. I had to go back to Seoul at the end of my trip, and I took a really early train in, and I couldn't check into my Airbnb until 4. So I did not want to sit around for 8 hours just waiting. I wanted to actually use my time in Korea. So I got one of those lockers, and I was able to walk around freely without having to worry about leaving my stuff somewhere unsecure or trying to check in early. Hey everyone, so as I'm editing this video, I realized I forgot to talk about the third thing, which is an adapter. If you're not from Korea or haven't been to Korea, you may not have seen one of these before. This is what the plugs look like, the adapters look like in, the outlets, they look like this in Korea. And I'm lucky because I don't have to ever think about this, because in Taiwan and in the US, we have the same ones. We have the two-prong ones. The one thing that you might want if you come to Taiwan too is a 3-prong adapter, because there are almost never 3 prongs for the outlets here. So if you have something that needs 3 prongs, I would probably get an adapter for that. They do sell those here in Taiwan though, and adapters. I could not find an adapter in Korea. I did eventually find one towards like the end of my trip. I was really lucky in Seoul. They actually had an adapter there in my Airbnb. But in Busan, I couldn't find one. I went to a bunch of convenience stores. I went to some pharmacies, some tourist shops. I even went to like a market where they sell electrical outlets, and they didn't have an adapter there. I have no clue why they didn't have one there, but I couldn't find one. Eventually in Gyeongju, I was really lucky. Maybe it's because it's a place with a ton of tourists, but they had an outlet adapter, like a universal adapter, in a 7-Eleven. So if you're really like desperate to find one, maybe you'll find one in 7-Eleven. But yeah, I would recommend you get one. The one that I got looks like, let me find it real quick. The one that I got looks like this. It says Europe on it. So maybe Korea and Europe have the same one. I don't know. I've never been to Europe before. I have noticed though that the Europe one is a bit thinner than the actual like plug that I got in Korea. And that does matter, because this wouldn't work on a wall because it would like fall out. It wasn't secure enough. So if you're gonna get an adapter, I would really try to get one like for Korea. This Europe one will work like on extension cords, because if it's laid down flat, it doesn't need to be as secure. It'll still work. So I was able to charge my stuff with this one, but I would probably try to find one that's more oriented for Korea if that's where you're going. Back to the video. Throughout the rest of our time in Seoul, we went to different historical sites and some castles. I don't know too much about the history behind those specific places, but they were really impressive. If you've been to Beijing, the Forbidden City is kind of like the same vibe that you get from these places, but the ones in Korea are much smaller. One thing I like about the Forbidden City in Beijing, if I remember correctly, is that they show some like setups of what the inside of the building would be. But for the most part, in the places that we went to in Seoul, the insides were just kind of empty. It's more of about a display of architecture and not so much about like showing what life was like for people living there. We also went to the National Museum of Korea in Seoul. The first floor is the part I would recommend for foreigners who are traveling there because it's full of Korean history and culture. They have it divided up into the Korean dynasties, so you can see how Korea changed and progressed as time went on. The East Asian countries that I've been to, like China, Japan, and Korea, have a ton of history, especially when compared to the US that only has like 500 years of written history. So if you're really interested in ancient culture, I would really recommend going to the National Museum of Korea. Of course, we were also enjoying the food there. Seoul has some great Western food too, but I was trying to enjoy as much Korean food as I could while I was there. I was really enjoying trying to get some new dishes that I haven't had or hard to find in Taiwan. I love kimchi, so I was having kimchi every time I could. My favorite meal in Seoul was this sort of like pancake thing that they had. If you're familiar with Taiwanese food or Chinese food, it's kind of like jianbing, but I don't know the Korean name for it. It was really good. Of course, like Korean beef is really good too. Korean bulgogi. It's amazing. We had it a few times, I think, in different varieties. If you're interested in Korean food, the next city that we went to was also great. We went to Busan after that, after Seoul. Busan was my favorite part of the whole trip by far. I really hope I can go back there. Our Airbnb was great. It was much nicer than our first one. We didn't have to hike up any stairs, and the view was amazing. We had a view of the beach. Not only was the view good, but the location's good because we're so close to the beach. There are also strips of restaurants and shops nearby, so it was really convenient to get anything that we needed. The biggest things we did in Busan were go see historical temples, and we went to an art museum. The art museum didn't allow photography in some places, so I don't have pictures or videos of everything, but I would recommend checking out this museum if you're interested in modern art. Busan just felt really nice because it was a great balance between convenience and space. I didn't feel so crowded in Busan like I did in some parts of Seoul. That's one of my biggest complaints about Taipei that you've probably seen in this video. It's just walking around and navigating people in such a densely populated city. So I really hope I can go back to Busan pretty soon. After Busan, we went to Gyeongju, and Gyeongju was nice. It's a more rural place. Bouncing off of what I just said about space, Gyeongju is very spacious. There are a lot of tourists there, and I was surprised to hear a lot of Chinese, actually. There were a lot of Chinese tourists walking around in this city. I don't have any footage of the Airbnb that we stayed in, but you're not missing out on much. It was much smaller and not as nice as our one in Busan. Gyeongju itself, though, was really interesting. It's a really important city because it used to be a capital of Korea. It was the capital during the Silla Kingdom's reign. That was between 57 BC and 935 AD. So it's just crazy to think about how long the history is of these countries. like I said before, like because of the U.S., its written history is only a few hundred years old, so it's just amazing. Gyeongju had some historical castles and some stargazing towers and some other important Buddhist sites like Bulguksa and Sokuram. Those are some places that we went to. And I think it's really important to go to these kind of cultural sites if you're going to travel to Korea. You can learn more about religious history and culture from visiting places like these. It was also nice to see a more rural city. Although Gyeongju is a really big city, it's much more rural than Busan and Seoul, and it was cool to see like the landscape, the natural landscape of Korea. So after Gyeongju, we went back to Seoul. Minji spent some time with her family while I did some more touring around the city. The next day we went back to Taiwan, and that was about 2 days ago as of now. I really miss Busan already. I hope we can go back soon. I feel like I didn't get enough time in that city. I really want to experience the different areas, and we didn't get to see that much. I'll be practicing my Korean as I have some time to prepare now for going back. I just hope I won't have to rely, like I said, on Minji or others' English abilities that much next time. If you have any other questions or comments about Korea, feel free to leave those in the comments below. If there's any other content you'd like to see in the future, I'd also like to hear about that. If you want more content related to East Asia, languages, traveling, or any other weird stuff that I post about, feel free to subscribe to my channel or view past videos that I've already made. And I hope to see you in those future videos.